You escaped it 2 and well, actually 1-0-1, right? You know what's funny about these over unders, season win total bets for a lot of people that they do. You know, I think the Packers are at like 10.5 or something maybe, and maybe that went down since then. But the Vikings were at like 9.5 or 10. Whenever teams tie, like the Steelers in Cleveland and the Packers and Vikings, that just favors the under so much more than the over, because you can't go over the tie, but the under can hit. Like you can tie every single game and you go way under the win total, right? So that, I think that's really interesting. You know how that is affecting that part of the betting side of things in football. But lots of crazy things in week 2, my friend. And
yeah, let's get to it.
Let's get right to it. We're going to start out here with key injuries. Do you want to go first?
Sure. A couple key injuries. Joe Mixon went down with a knee injury. He had to remove some loose cartilage in his knee. He's going to be out 2 to 4 weeks. So he was the guy I was banking on. I had him in a couple of leagues. So that definitely hurts a lot of fantasy football leagues out there if you had him as one of your running backs. LaShawn McCoy this past week, he got banged up a little bit too. He had some bruised rib cartilage. He's questionable for this week, so that's another injury. And then Delvin Cook of the hamstring injury, so that's a major one. A lot of people drafted Delvin Cook in the first couple rounds, so that could be a major blow if he can't play this week or next week. So
I thought he was going to be okay, though. I thought that
he should be okay. But then another injury too. That's actually a good thing. Is Carson Wentz. He just got cleared to play today, and he will be starting week 3. So get him back into your lineups for all you fantasy football guys out there that have Carson Wentz or drafted him later in rounds and got him as a sleeper in some of the leagues because he was injured. You definitely put him back into your lineup this week. He's also got a very good matchup this week as well. The Eagles are be playing the Colts, who have a very poorish defense. So definitely get Wentz back in there. Even though it's his first game back, he might be a little bit rusty, but I still expect him to have at least a couple touchdowns and at least over 200 yards probably.
Yeah, and especially perfect opening now that Nick Foles lost the game. You know, that takes a little bit more pressure off him and a little bit more controversy off the situation as well. I think this Colts-Eagles game might be higher scoring than people think here. It's the Eagles' defense did not look good against Tampa, and to be honest with you, they didn't look that good against Atlanta. I thought it was more Atlanta just blowing it, especially at the end where they should have won the game. But the only other 2 injuries that I have to add to that, which is Melvin Gordon. He has an upper body injury, it says, but they think he's going to be back, but always something to watch, want to make sure. And a really bad injury that happened was Mike Wallace. He had a terrible ankle injury, and they're talking like he's going to be out for the year, which is usually like an Achilles tendon or a broken ankle. So that's just one less receiver for the Eagles for Wentz to throw to. So definitely think about that. But at the same time, they should just be throwing to their running backs, to Zach Ertz and Aguilar anyway. They should kind of have some decoys out there as much as they can. But I still think Wentz should have a decent game. Yeah, not too bad on the injury front, right?
Yeah, and then we also had one other one for the Eagles, too. Jay Ajayi left the game, actually, this past week. Wendell Smallwood got quite a few more carries. And Corey Clement, our old Wisconsin alum, those guys got a few more carries as well. He did come back into the game, but he did have some back issues. So that can sometimes linger as well. But he did come back into the game, and he should play again this week. But just keep an eye on that as well.
Yeah, if you're in a 10 or 12-team league, there's a chance Clement's not owned. You might want to pick him up because they might just rest Ajayi anyway, and just to make sure he's okay and try to work on his longevity. There's always a chance teams will do that. So you hate it when that happens, but make sure you handcuff your big players there. Let's move right into waiver pickups for week 3. I'll go ahead and get started on this one. I got Ted Ginn. Now, I wasn't able to do that podcast last week with you, Dave, as everyone knows, but he was my sleeper player, my nasty sleeper of the week, and he had 123 yards at TD and a 2-point conversion, about 24 fantasy points based on a half-point PPR league. So that was pretty good. I nailed that sleeper if anybody got our newsletter last week. I, of course, didn't start him, though. I should have, but I didn't. It's hard to start a guy sometimes when you're really stacked. But at the same time, if there's a flex position, he would have been a great addition last week. Blake Bortles, man, he made a lot of people look bad last week. I think he kind of found his swagger again. So we'll see how long that lasts. But if you need a backup quarterback and possibly use one for matchups, Blake Bortles could be a solid one. He scored a ton of points last week against the Patriots. Josh Gordon. Lots of people cut Josh Gordon last week when they heard Cleveland was going to get rid of him. I heard he was doing some drone stunt. Actually, somebody on Twitter said his friend works with Josh Gordon, and he's trying to outrun a drone, and he kind of hurt his hamstring, and I think the Browns were just about enough. They had just about enough, but they were able to trade him to the Patriots, it looks like, because the Patriots are hurting for receivers because Edelman's still out for another few weeks on suspension. So Josh Gordon could be a nice little pickup if somebody overreacted and quickly dropped Josh Gordon. With Joe Mixon's injury, Giovanni Bernard's the guy, right? And he's probably owned. I would guess he's owned, maybe in like 70%. I didn't check the number, but Mark Walton might be another guy to pick up too because he's going to get some touches. Let's just say you're in desperate need of a running back. Mark Walton is a guy that you could pick up there to fill in a gap for a little while. Ryan Fitzpatrick. Okay, so the guy forever has not had any longevity. He'd kill it and then he'd throw 5 picks, but I've never seen him put 2 games in a row like he did, right? And he has no pressure on him. Jameis Winston's kind of just still sitting in the dark here, might be losing his job. If he wins this week, he's got the job. And especially in dual quarterback leagues or very deep dynasty leagues, this guy is definitely one you're going to want on your team after this week, especially if you have the bench room. So 820 yards so far about, and we'll see if he freezes out later in the future. Jesse James, really, if you need a tight end, Jesse James played extremely well, and they're doubling up on Antonio Brown, and all his fantasy owners are giving him shit, and he's reacting on Twitter, and shouldn't be. He gets really frustrated when he can't get the ball, and they're throwing to the tight end because of that. Tyler Boyd, he had 9 targets and 1 TD this week. Tyler Boyd shocked me. He's doing extremely well. John Brown, all right, he had 10 targets, 92 yards, and a touchdown. He's Baltimore's best receiver. It's not Crabtree. It's John Brown. And John Brown is going to be involved in a lot more of these schemes. He's kind of like a Tyreek Hill type, sized guy, very fast. But I think the schemes now kind of favor those types of running wide receivers, the old slot wide receiver. They're putting him in a lot more situational type plays. Dante Moncrief, if you don't own him, there's a few leagues that people don't. 9 targets and a TD. He's going to continue to get that kind of, that kind of production, I believe. Javarius Allen had 7 targets as a running back. That's pretty good. You for a PPR league, especially, Buck Allen's the way to go. And Shady's backup is Marcus Murphy, I believe, isn't it, Dave?
It is, but they also have Chris Ivory there as well. Ivory vultured a goal line touchdown this last week after Shady went out. But Marcus Murphy did have a few catches this past week, and he had a few carries as well. So it's really hard to say, but he is currently number 2 on the depth chart right now, is Marcus Murphy.
Gotcha. Okay, so he's someone you're going to want to pick up if you own Shady, I think. Shady might be back this week, but like I said, he's too important. I think even on a terrible Bulls team, he gets a lot of touches. So you gotta handcuff him. Anybody I missed, Dave?
Just a few guys, actually. I do agree with you on Giovanni Bernard. He's probably going to be the top pickup this week if someone doesn't have him in your league. 2 games last year while Mixon was out, he averaged 12.5 carries and 6.5 targets per game. So compared with what he does when Mixon plays, it's 5.7 carries and 3.4 targets. So he's definitely going to have a uppage in his usage, and he definitely should be a nice person if you can get him picked up this week if no one had him. Just going to say, too, Moncrief and Keelan Cole. Keelan Cole is owned in 48% of leagues right now. Moncrief on only 8%. So they're definitely guys you want to pick up if someone still doesn't have them. Some people even drafted Keelan Cole in a few of my leagues. But he's over the last 3 games of the regular season last year, he averaged 10 targets per game, with no fewer than 8 targets in any of those contests did Cole. And then he's had quite a few targets this year in the first couple weeks as well. So Keelan Cole is a guy you definitely want to target this week if he's still out there. And Moncrief would be my second choice on that team too, with Bortles playing well. Another guy is Latavius Murray. I forgot to mention him, Kiev. He's a guy. He's Dalvin Cook's backup. So if his hamstring does force him out of the Sunday's game, you definitely want to look at picking him up. He can be a high-end fantasy back when Cook is out, too. In 12 games without Cook in 2017, he averaged 16.8 carries and 1.25 targets a game. So he's definitely a running back you'd want to pick up if no one does have him. He's only owned in 44% of leagues right now. Fitzmagic, that's my boy. Definitely pick him up if he's still out there. He's playing well right now, and he's got a good matchup this week again as well. So definitely pick him up, like Kiev said, too. John Brown, like you said, there was another guy I had on my list as well. Geronimo Allison, that's a guy you didn't mention as well. He's a guy I would have talked about last week if we were.
I actually had him on my newsletter last week. So
okay, sounds good.
That's
another guy we wanted to talk about as well. He's played a significant role in the offense. He's had 14 targets. He's only 2 behind Cobb and 6 behind Adams, so he's definitely getting targets as the third receiver. So he's definitely a guy you want to keep an eye on too. Pick up if no one still picked him up last week. And then I'm sure you had Eckler on your list last week as well, but he's definitely a guy you want to take a look at too, with Gordon banged up a little bit too. So if no one's got Austin Eckler, you want to definitely pick him up as well. He's had 16 carries and 8 targets through the first 2 games. So 24 touches aren't workhorse numbers, but they're still good if you're looking for a running back to plug in, or if you had some injuries as well the first couple of weeks. Another guy, this is a guy that I really like too, is since Josh Gordon got traded, that opens up a spot in Cleveland actually for Rashard Higgins and Antonio Callaway. Antonio Callaway was just named the starter. He notched a touchdown in week 2. He's going to be the Cleveland Browns wideout that most people don't have on their radar. But Higgins is also another guy too. This is kind of like a situation in Jacksonville. Either one of these guys can have a big week. Despite Callaway being listed as a star, the Browns have moved on from Josh Gordon. And then Callaway didn't outstep Higgins either. Higgins, by a big margin, they played 50 snaps to Callaway's 50 snaps to Higgins' 46. So they both played pretty evenly last week with Gordon out.
Callaway was a beast last week, man. I saw that game. He's fast. He gets open. He's an NFL wide receiver, man. I'm sold on Callaway. You're right. I forgot to put that one down. He is a definite must-own, in my opinion.
Yeah, he's definitely a guy I like this week. He's definitely one of my breakout players this week as well. Callaway is a young receiver. He's fast. He can get deep. He can catch the deep ball as well. This past week, as you saw, the touchdown to put him ahead, and then the Cleveland Browns found a way to screw it away like usual. But definitely a guy you want to pick up if he's still out there. Ricky Seals-Jones, a guy that he's been a sleeper even before drafts. But he's another guy too. Jermaine Grisham is still out, so he's been getting targets as well in the Arizona offense, but their offense hasn't looked too good so far with Sam Bradford at quarterback. Hopefully they'll make the change to Rosen sooner or later, and then the offense will look a little bit better. But if you're looking for a tight end, he's another tight end. And then actually, the tight end from tonight, Will Dissly, if you didn't have him on your list last week, he just had 3 catches for 42 yards and a touchdown again tonight. So that's 2 touchdowns over the first 2 weeks. So if you're looking for a tight end, he's definitely a guy you want to target as well. With Jimmy Graham gone, there's really no other tight ends there, and he's their rookie tight end there that's been looking pretty good. One of the defenses you might want to take a look at too, actually, for this week is the Jets defense. A lot of people might not have them, but they actually put up 26 fantasy points this last week and 9 fantasy points this week. They have a good matchup too in the Browns, who like to throw interceptions and turn over the ball. So definitely get him in your lineup this week with them playing the Browns.
Yeah, I agree with all that. This is a big waiver week, for fantasy football here. It's kind of like where people start realizing, start really buying into people.